For most of us, weakness does not arrive wearing the face of disaster. It comes quietly, dressed in comfort. It speaks softly. It asks for nothing dramatic, only that we postpone the difficult task, avoid the uncomfortable conversation, or choose the easier road one more time. And because its voice is gentle, we mistake it for harmlessness, yet the human mind is shaped by what it repeatedly obeys. Every small surrender leaves a mark. Every moment in which comfort is chosen above growth becomes a lesson the mind remembers. Not because the choice itself is great, but because habits are built from countless ordinary decisions that seem too small to matter. We often imagine strength as something given to a fortunate few, as though courage, discipline, and resilience appear fully formed within certain people. But strength is usually the result of repeated resistance against comfort. The person who stands firm in difficult moments is often the same person who, long before the crisis arrived, practiced saying no to ease when ease was tempting. Comfort promises rest, but when it becomes a master rather than a servant, it slowly teaches the soul to avoid effort, the will to avoid challenge, and the mind to retreat from anything that demands growth. What begins as a preference becomes a pattern, and what becomes a pattern eventually becomes a character. Comfort has a peculiar way of disguising itself as wisdom. It rarely presents itself as an enemy. Instead, it appears reasonable, gentle, and even deserving. After all, what could be wrong with seeking ease after a long day, avoiding unnecessary strain, or choosing the path that asks less of us? The danger is not that comfort exists. The danger is that we begin to treat comfort as the highest good, allowing it to determine our choices, our habits, and eventually our character. Most people do not drift toward weakness because they consciously desire it. Few wake up in the morning intending to become less disciplined, less courageous, or less capable than they were before. Yet weakness often develops through a series of small permissions granted to comfort. A difficult task is postponed until tomorrow. An obligation is delayed because it feels unpleasant. A challenge is avoided because it threatens our sense of security. Each individual decision appears insignificant, almost invisible. Yet the accumulation of such choices quietly shapes the direction of a life. There is something deeply persuasive about immediate ease. The discomfort of effort is felt now, while the rewards of effort belong to the future. Comfort asks for very little patience. It offers relief in the present moment and requires no sacrifice. Discipline, on the other hand, demands that a person endure temporary difficulty for the sake of something not yet seen. It is therefore unsurprising that comfort often wins the argument. The human mind naturally gravitates toward what is pleasant and recoils from what is painful. Yet there is a distinction between what feels good and what is good. Many of the most valuable things in life begin in discomfort. Knowledge requires the discomfort of study. Strength requires the discomfort of exertion. Wisdom often emerges through struggle and reflection. Even meaningful relationships demand patience, forgiveness, and effort. Growth itself is rarely a comfortable experience because growth involves becoming more than one currently is. Comfort becomes dangerous when it convinces a person that difficulty is evidence that something is wrong. A generation accustomed to constant convenience may begin to see every obstacle as an injustice rather than an opportunity. The smallest inconvenience can feel unbearable when one has spent too much time avoiding hardship. The muscles of endurance, much like the muscles of the body, weaken when they are not exercised. A mind trained by comfort develops certain expectations. It begins to expect quick rewards, easy solutions, and immediate satisfaction. When reality refuses to cooperate with these expectations, frustration follows. Life is not designed to remove every challenge from our path. There will always be uncertainty, disappointment, failure, and resistance. A person who has learned only the language of comfort finds these realities shocking. A person who has practiced endurance recognizes them as ordinary parts of existence. The strange irony is that comfort often promises freedom while quietly producing dependence. The more a person relies upon ease, the less capable they become of functioning without it. What once felt like a luxury becomes a necessity. What once provided relief becomes something that must constantly be maintained. Instead of controlling comfort, the individual finds themselves controlled by it. Human beings possess a remarkable capacity for adaptation. We become shaped by whatever we repeatedly embrace. If we continually choose convenience over effort, avoidance over responsibility, and ease over growth, the mind adapts accordingly. It learns to retreat from challenge. It learns to seek escape whenever discomfort appears. It learns that the highest priority is not truth, growth, courage, or purpose, but personal ease. Comfort speaks in a quiet voice because it rarely needs to shout. It understands that the greatest transformations often happen gradually. A single choice may seem harmless, but a habit formed over years possesses enormous power. The person who consistently chooses comfort is not merely enjoying moments of ease. They are teaching themselves what to value, what to pursue, and what to avoid. Every repeated surrender strengthens the belief that discomfort is something to fear rather than something to overcome. Every choice, however small it may appear, carries a significance that extends beyond the moment in which it is made. We often imagine that our lives are shaped by grand decisions, those rare crossroads where the direction of the future seems to depend upon a single act of will. Yet much of what we become is determined not by extraordinary choices but by ordinary ones. The unnoticed decisions of daily life possess a quiet influence that is often greater than the dramatic moments we tend to remember. The human mind is not merely a container for thoughts. It is a living thing that adapts to repeated patterns. What we choose today affects what we are likely to choose tomorrow. A single action may seem isolated, but the mind rarely treats it as such. It interprets repeated behavior as instruction. In a sense, every decision serves as a lesson, teaching the mind what is acceptable, what is desirable, and what should be avoided. When a person chooses discipline over distraction, they are doing more than completing a task. They are sending a message to themselves. They are reinforcing the idea that temporary discomfort can be endured. They are strengthening the belief that purpose matters more than impulse. Likewise, when a person repeatedly abandons important responsibilities for the sake of convenience, they are also teaching the mind. They are training it to seek immediate relief whenever effort becomes unpleasant. This process often occurs without conscious awareness. Few people pause before every decision and consider the long-term effects upon their character. The choice feels too small to deserve such attention. One extra hour of procrastination appears harmless. One excuse seems insignificant. One avoidance of difficulty hardly appears capable of changing anything. Yet the mind notices repetitions that consciousness ignores. It learns from patterns rather than isolated incidents. Consider how habits are formed. No habit arrives fully developed. It begins with a single action, followed by another and then another. What was once difficult gradually becomes natural. This is true of both strengths and weaknesses. Courage grows through repeated acts of courage. Laziness grows through repeated acts of avoidance. Patience develops through repeated moments of restraint. Impatience develops through repeated surrender to frustration. The remarkable thing about the human mind is its willingness to believe what behavior repeatedly demonstrates. A person may tell themselves that they are disciplined, ambitious, or resilient, but the mind pays greater attention to actions than to declarations. It listens less to promises and more to evidence. If someone consistently chooses the easier path, the mind begins to expect that pattern. If someone repeatedly confronts challenges despite discomfort, the mind begins to accept difficulty as a normal part of life. Many people underestimate the power of consistency because they are searching for dramatic transformation. They hope for sudden motivation, instant confidence, or a moment of inspiration that permanently changes everything. Yet lasting change is often far less dramatic. It emerges through repetition. The mind is shaped not by what happens occasionally, but by what happens regularly. A person who reads a few pages each day may not notice immediate growth, yet their mind is being trained toward learning. A person who exercises regularly may not witness dramatic results overnight, yet their mind is learning persistence. A person who consistently keeps promises to themselves develops a growing sense of trust in their own ability to act. These changes accumulate quietly beneath the surface long before they become visible. The opposite process is equally powerful. Every time a commitment is abandoned without resistance, the mind absorbs a lesson. Every time an excuse replaces action, a lesson is absorbed. Every time discomfort is treated as a reason to stop rather than continue, the lesson grows stronger. The mind becomes increasingly familiar with retreat and increasingly unfamiliar with perseverance. Because of this, the question behind every decision is often larger than it first appears. The choice is not only about what happens in the present moment, it is also about what kind of person is being formed through repetition. The mind is always listening, always learning, always adapting to the instructions provided by daily behavior. What appears to be a single choice is often a training session, and every training session leaves its mark upon the character being built. There is a tendency in human nature to admire greatness, while overlooking the humble beginnings from which greatness usually emerges. We see the accomplished individual and imagine that their strength arrived through some extraordinary gift, some rare quality possessed only by a fortunate few. What remains hidden from view are the countless small decisions that slowly shape that strength over time. The foundations of remarkable character are often laid in moments so ordinary that they scarcely attract attention. Discipline is rarely born in dramatic circumstances. It is not usually forged in a single heroic act or established through a sudden burst of motivation. More often, it begins in small acts of obedience to what one knows ought to be done. It appears when a person chooses responsibility over convenience, effort over ease, and consistency over impulse. These choices may seem insignificant when viewed individually, yet they possess a cumulative power that far exceeds their immediate appearance. Human beings are creatures of habit. We become, to a remarkable degree, what we repeatedly do. Every action leaves behind a trace, shaping future behavior and influencing future decisions. A single act of discipline may not appear impressive, but it creates a pattern. Repeated often enough, that pattern becomes part of one's character. The individual who consistently practices small acts of self-control gradually develops the capacity for greater acts of self-control. There is wisdom in recognizing that strength grows much like a tree. A tree does not spring from the earth fully mature. It begins as something fragile and easily overlooked. Day after day, it grows through processes too gradual to notice. Yet the accumulation of countless ordinary days eventually produces something capable of withstanding storms. In much the same way, discipline grows through repeated choices that seem almost trivial at the time they are made. The difficulty lies in the fact that small acts often feel unimportant. The mind naturally seeks visible results and immediate rewards. When effort produces little apparent change, discouragement can quickly arise. A person may wonder what difference it makes to wake up on time one morning, to complete one difficult task, or to resist one temptation. The answer is that the immediate result is not always the most important consequence. The act itself is shaping the individual who performed it. Every time a person keeps a promise made to themselves, something valuable is strengthened. Trust begins to develop between intention and action. The mind learns that decisions carry weight, and that commitments are not merely suggestions. This process may appear invisible, yet it contributes to the formation of inner stability. A person who repeatedly honors small commitments becomes more capable of honoring larger ones. The opposite is equally true. Small acts of neglect can gradually weaken character. One broken commitment may seem harmless. One unnecessary delay may appear insignificant. Yet repeated often enough, these actions establish their own pattern. The mind begins to expect surrender rather than perseverance. It becomes accustomed to excuses and increasingly unfamiliar with endurance. Weakness rarely arrives all at once. It grows through accumulation just as strength does. There is also a certain humility required to value small acts of discipline. Modern thinking often celebrates extraordinary achievements, while ignoring the quiet faithfulness that makes such achievements possible. Yet much of life is lived in ordinary moments rather than extraordinary ones. Character is not built primarily during rare crises. It is built during daily routines, private decisions, and unnoticed acts of responsibility. A person who consistently chooses the harder right over the easier wrong is engaged in a process of construction. With each act of discipline, a foundation is being strengthened. The individual may not feel stronger immediately. They may not notice dramatic changes in confidence or ability. Nevertheless, something important is taking place beneath the surface. Habits are forming. Expectations are shifting. The mind is adapting to a new standard of behavior. What makes small acts of discipline so powerful is their ability to transform the ordinary into something meaningful. They demonstrate that strength is not reserved for exceptional people living exceptional lives. Strength becomes available wherever a person is willing to practice obedience in the small things. The seemingly insignificant decision to continue when stopping would be easier, to act when delay would be more comfortable, or to remain faithful when compromise would be more convenient becomes part of a larger pattern. Through repetition, these modest acts gradually accumulate into resilience, self-control, perseverance, and the kind of inner strength that others often mistake for talent or natural ability. There is a curious contradiction at the heart of human life. We desire growth, yet we resist the very conditions that make growth possible. We admire courage, wisdom, strength, and perseverance in others, but we often shrink from the discomfort through which such qualities are formed. We long to become more than we are, while simultaneously wishing to remain undisturbed by the process of becoming. Growth has never been a comfortable experience. It requires movement beyond familiar boundaries, and the familiar possesses a powerful attraction. There is security in remaining where one already understands the rules, where expectations are predictable, and where failure appears less threatening. The unknown, by contrast, introduces uncertainty. It asks us to risk embarrassment, disappointment, and struggle. Yet it is precisely within that uncertainty that growth begins its work. The human mind naturally gravitates toward what is familiar. Familiarity offers reassurance. Even situations that limit us can feel preferable to opportunities that require change. Many people remain trapped not because they lack possibilities, but because comfort persuades them that remaining unchanged is safer than venturing into new territory. The known weakness often feels less frightening than the unknown challenge. This tendency can be observed throughout life. A person may remain silent rather than speak, because speaking carries the possibility of rejection. Another may avoid pursuing an opportunity because failure seems too painful to risk. Someone else may postpone meaningful action indefinitely, waiting for confidence to arrive before taking the first step. Yet confidence itself often grows only after action has already begun. The very thing they are waiting for is frequently found on the other side of the discomfort they seek to avoid. There is a mistaken belief that growth occurs when circumstances become easier. In reality, growth often occurs because circumstances become more demanding. The body grows stronger when it encounters resistance. The mind grows sharper when it wrestles with difficult ideas. Character grows deeper when it faces trials that cannot be avoided. Without resistance, development remains shallow. Without challenge, potential often remains dormant. Comfort encourages a person to remain within the boundaries of existing ability. It whispers that there is no need to stretch further, try harder, or endure more. It presents present satisfaction as more valuable than future development. Yet every meaningful improvement requires a willingness to tolerate temporary discomfort. The student must endure the challenge of study. The athlete must endure the strain of training. The artist must endure repeated failure. The individual seeking wisdom must endure uncertainty and self-examination. One of the reasons discomfort feels so unpleasant is because it exposes limitations. It reveals what we do not yet know, what we cannot yet do, and where we still need improvement. Such revelations can wound pride. We prefer to feel competent rather than inadequate. We prefer environments where our strengths are visible and our weaknesses remain hidden. Yet growth depends upon the honest recognition of weakness. A person cannot develop abilities they refuse to acknowledge they lack. The discomfort associated with growth is not merely physical or practical. Often it is deeply personal. Growth requires the surrender of old assumptions, familiar excuses, and comforting illusions. It may involve admitting mistakes, abandoning unhealthy habits, or accepting responsibilities previously avoided. These changes can feel like losses because they require letting go of something familiar, even when that familiar thing is holding us back. There is also a peculiar transformation that occurs when a person repeatedly embraces discomfort for a worthy purpose. What once seemed intimidating gradually becomes manageable. Challenges that once appeared overwhelming become ordinary. The individual discovers capacities that would have remained hidden had they never ventured beyond the boundaries of comfort. Strength emerges not because difficulty disappeared, but because endurance increased. Many of life's greatest opportunities arrive disguised as discomfort. They appear as responsibilities rather than rewards, challenges rather than blessings, and obstacles rather than advantages. The immediate experience may feel unpleasant, yet within those experiences lies the possibility of expansion. The mind learns new ways of thinking. Character develops new depths. Abilities extend beyond previous limits. Comfort offers the promise of ease, but growth offers the possibility of transformation. One seeks to preserve the present state, the other seeks to improve it. One asks a person to remain where they are, the other invites them to become what they are capable of becoming. The path of growth therefore begins at the precise point where comfort loses its authority and a person becomes willing to move forward despite uncertainty, despite resistance, and despite the discomfort that accompanies every meaningful step into unfamiliar ground. There are costs in life that announce themselves immediately. When a person spends money, the loss is visible. When an object is broken, the damage can be seen. When a mistake produces consequences, those consequences often arrive quickly enough to be recognized. Yet some of the most significant costs are hidden from view. They accumulate quietly over time, unnoticed because they do not demand immediate attention. The cost of avoiding discomfort belongs to this category. Most people recognize the unpleasantness of discomfort. They feel it when confronted by difficult work, challenging conversations, unfamiliar situations, or demanding responsibilities. What they often fail to recognize is that avoiding discomfort is not a neutral decision. It is not simply the absence of struggle. It carries consequences of its own, though those consequences rarely appear at once. When a difficult task is postponed, there is often a sense of relief. The pressure disappears, at least temporarily. The mind experiences comfort because the unpleasant demand has been removed from immediate view. Yet the task itself remains. The difficulty has not vanished, it has merely been delayed. What appears to be an escape is often only a postponement. Meanwhile, the habit of avoidance grows stronger. This is one of the hidden costs of avoiding discomfort. The immediate reward is obvious, but the long-term effect is less visible. Every act of avoidance teaches the mind a particular lesson. It learns that relief is more important than responsibility. It learns that discomfort should be escaped rather than endured. Over time, this lesson begins to shape behavior in ways that reach far beyond the original situation. There is a subtle difference between resting and avoiding. Rest can restore strength and prepare a person for future effort. Avoidance seeks to eliminate effort altogether. One serves growth, the other prevents it. Yet, because both may feel pleasant in the moment, they are often confused. A person may believe they are protecting themselves from unnecessary strain, when they are actually weakening their ability to face challenges. The hidden nature of this cost makes it particularly dangerous. If every act of avoidance produced immediate harm, people would quickly recognize the pattern and correct it. But avoidance often appears harmless because the consequences emerge gradually. Opportunities disappear quietly. Skills remain undeveloped. Confidence weakens. Potential remains unrealized. These losses rarely arrive all at once. They accumulate over months and years until a person begins to wonder why they feel stuck, despite having avoided so much discomfort. Avoidance also creates a peculiar illusion regarding difficulty. The more frequently a person escapes discomfort, the larger discomfort appears. Challenges that could once have been managed begin to feel overwhelming. Ordinary responsibilities start to seem burdensome. Small obstacles appear larger than they truly are. This occurs because endurance, like strength, develops through use. When it is neglected, even minor difficulties can seem intimidating. There is another hidden cost that reaches deeper than missed opportunities or weakened resilience. Avoidance gradually alters the way a person sees themselves. Confidence is not merely a feeling that appears without cause. It is often built through evidence. Each time a person confronts a challenge and survives it, they gain proof that they are capable of handling difficulty. Each time they persevere despite discomfort, they strengthen trust in their own ability to endure. When discomfort is consistently avoided, this evidence is never gathered. The person remains uncertain of what they can accomplish because they rarely test their limits. They may begin to doubt their own capabilities, not because they lack potential, but because they have given themselves too few opportunities to discover it. The result is a diminished sense of confidence that stems not from inability but from avoidance. Perhaps the greatest hidden cost is the loss of transformation. Many of life's most valuable developments occur on the far side of discomfort. Wisdom often emerges through struggle. Patience develops through waiting. Courage grows through fear confronted rather than fear escaped. Character deepens through responsibilities accepted rather than avoided. By refusing discomfort, a person may unknowingly refuse the growth attached to it. The tragedy is not that discomfort exists. The tragedy is that many people spend so much effort avoiding temporary difficulty that they never discover what that difficulty was capable of producing. They see only the challenge standing before them and fail to recognize the strength, maturity, resilience, and understanding waiting beyond it. The discomfort itself is visible, but the cost of avoidance remains hidden, quietly shaping the future long after the moment of decision has passed. There is a common misunderstanding about mental strength. Many imagine it as a quality that certain people simply possess by nature, as though resilience, determination, and self-control are gifts distributed unevenly at birth. We look at individuals who remain calm under pressure, persist through difficulty, and continue forward despite obstacles, and we assume they must be fundamentally different from everyone else. Yet mental strength is rarely the result of natural advantage alone. More often, it is the result of repeated resistance against forces that would prefer comfort, ease, and immediate satisfaction. The mind develops much like any other part of a person. It grows according to what it is repeatedly asked to do. If it is continually protected from challenge, it remains unprepared for challenge. If it is consistently exercised through difficulty, it becomes increasingly capable of handling difficulty. This principle appears throughout life. Strength is not created by avoiding resistance, but by encountering it and responding appropriately. One of the reasons mental strength appears mysterious is because much of its development occurs in private. The world tends to notice visible achievements while overlooking the countless unseen decisions that made those achievements possible. People witness the moment of success, but not the years of discipline. They observe confidence, but not the repeated confrontations with fear that gradually produced it. They admire resilience without seeing the disappointments, setbacks, and frustrations through which resilience was formed. Every person faces moments of resistance. These moments arrive in different forms. Sometimes resistance appears as the temptation to quit when progress feels slow. Sometimes it appears as the desire to avoid responsibility because responsibility feels burdensome. At other times, it takes the form of fear, uncertainty, distraction, or self-doubt. In each case, the individual stands before a choice. They can yield to the force pulling them toward comfort, or they can resist it. Resistance is rarely pleasant. If it were easy, it would produce little growth. The very discomfort associated with resistance is what gives it value. When a person continues despite wanting to stop, they strengthen perseverance. When they act despite fear, they strengthen courage. When they remain focused despite distraction, they strengthen discipline. These qualities do not emerge because resistance disappears. They emerge because resistance is confronted repeatedly. The process is often gradual enough to escape notice. Mental strength is seldom built through a single act of heroism. More commonly, it develops through ordinary acts of faithfulness. A person gets out of bed when remaining there would be easier. They complete the work they promised to do despite lacking enthusiasm. They continue learning despite confusion. They remain patient despite frustration. None of these actions may seem remarkable in isolation, yet together they contribute to the formation of a stronger mind. There is a tendency to underestimate the significance of these small victories. Modern culture often celebrates dramatic transformations and sudden breakthroughs. Yet genuine strength usually grows through repetition rather than spectacle. The individual who consistently chooses what is right over what is easy gradually acquires a level of stability that cannot be manufactured through motivation alone. Their confidence rests not upon emotion but upon experience. They know they can endure because they have repeatedly endured. Resistance also reveals something important about human potential. Many people possess abilities they have never discovered because they have never demanded enough of themselves to uncover them. Comfort conceals potential by removing the need to use it. Resistance, by contrast, calls hidden capacities into action. It forces a person to adapt, learn, persevere, and grow. What once seemed impossible becomes manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes familiar. The strongest minds are not necessarily those that experience the least fear, uncertainty, or difficulty. Rather, they are often the minds that have learned how to function despite such experiences. Courage is not the absence of fear but action taken in its presence. Discipline is not the absence of temptation, but obedience maintained despite temptation. Resilience is not the absence of hardship, but the ability to continue through hardship. Mental strength, therefore, cannot be purchased, inherited, or borrowed from others. It is earned through repeated encounters with resistance. Each challenge faced honestly, each discomfort endured willingly, and each temptation resisted faithfully contributes something to the structure of character. The mind becomes stronger not because life grows easier, but because it learns, through countless acts of resistance, that difficulty need not determine its choices, and that discomfort need not possess authority over its actions.